Well, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folari. Today, let's take a look at the budget as was presented in the National Assembly on Monday by the Minister of Finance, Dr. Zainab Ahmed, speaking to a House of Reps committee on finance as it relates to the 2023-2025 medium-term expenditure framework. By now, of course, you know that the federal government projects a budget of 19.76 trillion naira, and there's a deficit of 11.3 trillion naira in there. We'll sort of get to understand how all of this is going to be financed. The petrol subsidies to remain in there, but I have a couple of experts that will help us understand exactly how this budget should be viewed and what indeed it does say for the development of our economy or otherwise. First, let me introduce Professor Ken Ife. Professor Ken Ife is a development economist and lead consultant, ECOWAS Commission. Good morning to you, Prof, and thank you very much for making yourself available. Indeed. Thank you very much. And we also have Dr. Ezekiel Gomez. Dr. Ezekiel Gomez is Executive Director, JOS Business School. Good morning to you, Dr. Gomez.
Good morning.
Thank you very much. I'm in studio here, Yori Folari, at the TVC Lagos studios. Now, Professor Ken Ife, first of all, just the headline alone, how do you view the headline that we are projecting? That is to say, the federal government is projecting 19.76 trillion, and a deficit is in there of 11.3 trillion naira. Just looking at those figures, what does this say about our plan for next year? Yes.
Yeah, it is going to be a very difficult time ahead, and very difficult choices are going to have to be made because there's a worsening deficit, and there's a lot more to this budget than we can safely say in one sentence.
And Dr. Gomez, for non-experts that are watching and listening to this, Dr. Gomez, the deficit is borrowing, right, Dr. Gomez?
Yes, it is borrowing.
It is
spending
borrowing.
what you don't have.
We're spending what we don't have. And, it sounds one kind, as we say locally, but in governments, this usually happens. Maybe now understanding the basics like that, look, 19.76 trillion budget, which includes an 11.3 trillion naira deficit, which means we're going to be borrowing that. Let me continue with you, Dr. Gomez, for a moment. What actually causes the deficits that we have on our hands now?
Deficits are caused by inability to generate sufficient enough revenue to fund expenditure. When we're generating only about 8.4 trillion in naira, and we want to spend 19 trillion. I mean, it tells you straight away that we want to spend what we don't have. We're going to, as a country, it means that we're broke, so broke that we have so many needs, very critical needs, but we don't have the money to fund these needs. So we have to go and borrow. It's like a family that needs to spend 200 naira and has only about maybe 8 naira in the pocket. So how do? You have to go and borrow about 12 naira to be able to make up this expenditure. So it's going to be like Professor Ken Ife said, it's going to be a very, very difficult year for Nigeria and Nigerians generally. I think it's going to be one of the most difficult years we've ever seen in a long time.
Professor Ife, we hear from the minister that the petrol subsidy is to remain till mid-2023, but the bigger point that I wanted to make is, speaking about the deficit, 60% of the revenue in the outgoing year was planned for debt servicing, but in some cases it went as high as 90% of revenue. What does that mean, Prof?
Now, what happens is that when you project on revenue, all the revenue, they don't arrive on January. They arrive, monthly over the year. What happens is that the oil revenue tends to be lower in the first quarter, in the first and second quarter, and more heavy and heavier. You can even see that from the scenario 1 and scenario 2. In scenario 1, they were expecting a revenue of 6.34 trillion, of which in that first half year, they were looking at oil to contribute 373 billion. So you can even tell you that even though more is expected from the oil, a very little proportion will be arriving early. And then don't also forget that even though many of the companies have their end of year in March, their actual money don't come in until, they have to assess their tax. They have to tell you, but if they start paying up on the company income tax, it will be in the other half of the year. So, so that's the reality. So more money. So we tend to have very heavy, up to 90% debt service to revenue. In other words, the amount of money that is used to service the debt tends to be higher. The ratio tends to be a lot higher in the first 6 months. It hangs around 80 to 90%. But as you progressively head towards the end of the year, it starts coming down to about 70% or something like that. That's when more revenue begin to hit the bank.
Okay. Dr. Gomos, government appears to be projecting this a revenue of 8.46 trillion of this figure of 19.76, 11.3 trillion making up the difference leading to 19.76. But this is projected on 1.9 trillion coming in from oil-related revenues, and the balance to make up the 8.46 trillion will be coming from non-oil sectors. I suppose it's also relevant that all of this is premised on $70 per barrel of crude oil and 435.57 naira to the dollar. You said, I think either you or Prof had said that it's looking like a difficult year ahead. All these indices there, how good are they? How encouraging are they?
First, let me say that they are too optimistic a bit for comfort for me as a person, in the sense that we're banking on the sunshine aspect, that is that things will look up, which is okay to feel that things will look up, but the indices are troubling. Crude oil sales, for instance, we're anticipating to sell about 1.69 million barrels per day. Today we're struggling with 1.3. And we've not tackled the issue of the bunkering and theft of crude oil. So what magic would it be to increase it to 1.6, 1.7? I don't know yet. Secondly, we're assuming that inflation is going to drop and that exchange rate will stay at 435 naira to the dollar. But we know that these two indices, these two critical indices of inflation and exchange rate, especially exchange rate, is not within our control per se, because the reasons why the exchange rate is going haywire is still there, and the Russia-Ukraine war is still there. It hasn't been updated. So issues like those indices that make up the issues like inflation is currently above 18%, and we're thinking that next year it will be 17%. I don't see that happening in the medium term. So some of these issues are some of the indices on which the budget, the assumptions on which the budget itself is placed are a bit troubling. We must be able to make it realistic. And there's one little thing that I wanted to point out. The deficit and the subsidy is based on the fact that government will have the courage to terminate subsidy payment by June next year. I'm not sure that would happen. You remember, election would have taken place in March, and a new government would just be coming in by May. So would the new government be courageous enough to terminate subsidy payment? So the first case scenario, which was optimistic, I don't see it happening, knowing the trend in Nigeria to succumb to pressure from, say, and from vested interest. I see subsidies still going ahead to December. That means that we're in for it in the sense that we're going to pay up to 7 trillion naira subsidy by end of 2023. That wipes out the because the rest are 4.
So our situation could get
and
more.
If you pay, if you take 7 trillion out of it, worse.
Please continue.
It can get much worse. I see it getting worse.
Okay. Professor Ife, when we sort of look at the minister's speech in the House of Representatives, and as Dr. Gomas has just said, 1.6, the projection is all based on 1.69 million barrels per day. You know, it's just been pointed out that we're struggling at around 1.3, but that's the projection, 1.6 million barrels. Now, the real growth rate of 3.7%, inflation, according to the minister, at 17.16% for the year is also a projection. Can one really depend on that? I heard Dr. Goma say that we're looking at fair weather, but who knows what the weather will be?
Our current inflation as at last month is 19.6.
19.6?
Yes, percent. So it will cross 20%. There's no doubt. The next one will cross 20% without a doubt, because if you look at the big driver there is food sub-basket index, which is about 22% and is cruising at the highest level. So it may well continue to go, but it will stagger, because by November-ish, going into Christmas, there will be a lot of expenditure from people who are, all the goods that have been ordered for that season will all begin to be sold by then. So you will see activity. And so the GDP will go up in that end, but the inflation may still stay around there. But it will be in the aftermath of that the harvest, the full harvest, could temper it down, because the full harvest will bring down the food sub-basket index down, and that will push back a little bit on the core inflation and headline inflation. So it's going to be a mixed message. But I hope that in the course of next year, there will be more wheat coming in. There will be less pressure on fertilizer increases in price. There may be more expansion on the gas plant to see if we can begin to exit the heavy consumption of diesel. The diesel is the one causing all this problem, because the diesel is making manufacturers' prices go up by 300% increase in the diesel. They're making the transporters that are using diesel. So there's so many things that enter into the equation. And then the politicians are going to be consuming more dollars to settle. So again, you're going to have more chaos and more speculation on our foreign exchange. So all of that will probably bring down inflation slightly. We have to wait until that election, and maybe around that May, when we can begin to realistically touch that inflation figure. And conversely, see whether the Dangote refinery comes in, because 40% of their production can actually enter into the equation. Because don't forget that they are cited in the export-free zone. So we can't have 100% of their petroleum product. Can only have much more of 40%. So, but it's not going to take away the subsidy, because what we will be saving is the component of the transport in and out of refined product, crude out and refined product in. That's essentially what we are going to be saving by injecting the Dangote's 40% of their production capacity into the system. But that is still something. But I have to tell you that the price of pump price will increase, because it is no longer whether government wants it or not. You saw what happened the last time it increased. The suppliers said we cannot, because they are using diesel to drive their trucks. They are using diesel at the power stations and at their dispensing stations to run their generators. So their cost has become unmanageable. So they have to push it up. So I can see petrol price go to 200 naira in next year, not by design, but by pressure from the transporters and the dispensing stations. They've got to go up. That has to go up. to narrow down our exposure to subsidy. And we're not going to remove subsidy by mid-year next year. We will reduce it. Will reduce by a force of increase in the pump price, as well as a decrease caused by Dangote's component coming on stream.
Okay. Dr. Gomas, what do you make of the real growth rate projection, Dr. Gomas, of 3.7%?
I think it's something that we can look at in terms of what is going to lead to that. What are the factors that made it? Like Prof. Ife said, we expect that probably by next year, more fertilizer will come into the market, into the economy, so there would be more agricultural production. But I don't see the GDP being a product of any oil-related development. I think that would be a far cry. It might be that the domestic production might improve, and then that might push it. But my prediction is that we might be at 3%, not 3.7. 3.7 is a little bit optimistic. I line myself more with what the IMF and the World Bank predicted, that we're looking at probably 2.9 to 3%, more of that than 3.7.
And when we talk about growth rate, what exactly does that mean for non-experts? A real growth rate? The real growth rate projected at 3.7%, what exactly is real growth in economic terms? What does it mean ordinarily?
It refers to, ordinarily it refers to the volume of goods and services produced in the economy, and especially when that's translated into value. So the gross domestic product is an aggregate all the goods and services produced in the economy, which includes services, which is one of the biggest drivers of the non-tangible. The real in terms of production, manufacturing sector took a hit. The oil sector took a hit because of the massive decline in oil production from almost 2 million barrels per day to 1.1. So these are the issues that make up the real production of goods and services in the economy. It's not really the wealth of the country, but just the goods and services.
And could that be an indicator of how well entrepreneurs are doing, businesses are doing, small businesses are doing, big businesses, all of that, the level of production in a given economy?
You have to say who you're asking the question.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's Ken or me.
Okay.
For me, it's not Ken. Maybe Ken can take that.
Okay.
See, there are two ways to measure GDP. You can measure it on constant in price, or you can use current market price. Now, when you come to nominal GDP, is at current market price. But the real GDP, you compute by using a deflator. And that deflator that deflates the fact, that takes into account the fact that there is inflation, that is other things going on in the economy, to give you the actual deflator that deflates that nominal GDP rate to the real GDP rate. But having said that, the question you asked, so I don't remember the question that you actually asked.
What was
the question again? Because I want to connect.
Yeah, I was asking what it really means to the ordinary person out there, and I think you've explained that. When economists talk about a real growth rate, I think we got that largely, the way you've explained it.
Yeah.
You know,
the wider the gap between the two, real and nominal, it now tells you the activity of other indicators like inflation and all of that. So it tells you how unreal these things could be. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the consumers, what happens is that with a high inflation, the consumers lose their purchasing power.
Exactly.
In other words, what they could buy, they are buying less in the market for the same amount of money that they have. And on the other hand, when you look at the inflation, the causes of the inflation will tell you a lot more story about why GDP has behaved the way it has behaved. If you look at the sources of inflation, a lot of it is structural in Nigeria, which means insecurity is on the witness stand. You have power supply infrastructure. You have the high rise in the diesel cost, almost 350%. And that has knock-on effect on the manufacturers, because studies say that 66% of manufacturers are actually providing power for themselves 90% of the time.
Okay.
Which means that sharp increases in diesel will affect their output.
Okay, Professor Ife, one moment, please. I beg your pardon, Professor Ife. Professor Ife, I beg your pardon for interrupting you, but we do have a caller. Chief Ajayi has called in from IKEJA. Good morning to you, Chief.
Good morning, Doris.
Good morning, sir. Please go ahead.
Good morning. Yes, we can see what the resources people are saying about Nigeria. Your government, your APC government has messed up Nigeria.
Yeah, but I thought you wanted to ask an economic question. We're trying to understand the budget. Chief, did you have an economic question leading towards understanding this budget? Chief Ajayi, please.
The petroleum subsidy, they said it was a scam before. They've messed up Nigeria. Okay?
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your contribution, Chief Ajayi, calling in from IKEJA. It is what we have. It is the budget that we have, and we're trying to understand it. And Dr. Gomos, as Professor Ife, he touched on that aspect that everybody's concerned about, which is that this inflation, the economists can keep on talking the big grammar, macro, micro, but the woman knows that she goes to the market and what used to be a full basket before, for the same amount of money, she's barely coming back with half a basket of all of those goods. That's the way in which I imagine the ordinary person will be understanding the situation that we're in. And it doesn't look as if there's a let-up, because Professor Ife said earlier, and I think you did too, that challenging times ahead. Now, the Minister of Finance has said that there are some efficiencies that can be derived from the way government does its own business to get a lot more efficient with public corporations and that kind of a thing. How much margin, how much leeway is actually in there? Significant or not?
Not very significant, unfortunately. The assumption by the minister and the system is that there will be an improvement, or there will be tighter enforcement of financial management or performance management to be able to draw out some efficiencies in terms of surpluses from government-owned enterprises. But the same government enterprises are playing in the same market we are. So they are being challenged by issues like inflation, rising production costs, and we've listed some of the challenges they're also facing. I don't see any efficiencies being driven from that. Its business is run as usual. What might be necessary is for cost-cutting measures, direct cost-cutting measures, not to rely on performance, on efficient financial performance management. There are what's called direct cost-cutting measures that we need to take. And that's why I agree with that there's need for hard choices. Hard decisions have to be made by government. Must we carry every burden that is being carried currently? Must the size of the public service remain the way it is? So some of these efficiencies that might be expected will be wiped out significantly by the current cost of governance.
Mazi OKOROAFOR in AROCHUKWU, good morning to you, sir. You had a question or a comment?
Both my question and the comment. You see, Sayori are our guests on Skype. There's no way in Nigeria we can move forward if we continue importing all our consumables. The economic variables in Nigeria have now been tackled with. Look, as long as states, the local government have refused to go and ask what they have, the competitive advantage in their respective local governments, Nigeria will continue borrowing. Let us face the reality of life, because if you look at other countries that are moving economically, they have to look inwards. But here in Nigeria, we are not looking inwards. Now you ask yourself, when we graduate all our young boys and young girls from universities, college of education, technical schools, How many of them have acquired the skill to be independent and to move or to bounce back on their own? None. Only maybe 30% or 20%. So Nigeria as a country, we have all it takes to bounce well and to move forward. Now look at the petroleum industry. What is happening? What the minister, what they are telling us. In Nigeria today, you have 6 geopolitical zones. What does it take? The southeastern Nigeria, when I mean by eastern Nigeria, south, south, and southeast, all those states to start producing their own oil. That is by refining their own oil, by establishing what we call the modern refinery. By the time we do that, it will run straight to other states. We stop all this importation. But you see, to get the dollar to move forward for this and that, the dollar is look at Angola. Angola had a problem. Their dollar rate was 600, 600, but at the end of it, it now bounced back to the 300 or something to the highest 400. But Nigeria will continue increasing day in, day out. So what are we saying? We have to look inwards. We have to look inwards. We are just grazing how much? Grazing a liter is how much? 80-something naira per liter.
Yes.
Where a country like ours, we have all the crude oil, all the crude oil, and we cannot harness simple kerosene. If you go to your petroleum industry, you talk about expansion of industry, you get petroleum, you get diesel, you get kerosene, you get other variables. In crude oil, with that, you extract over 6,000 materials from crude oil. But what are we doing? Nothing. Good morning.
Okay. Good morning, Mazi OKOROAFOR. And I think a bit of an angry Mazi OKOROAFOR. These figures are enough to make anyone angry, let it be said. Go ahead now, please, with your question or comment.
Good morning, Uncle Yori, and good morning to your guests.
Yes, thank you.
Uncle Yori, I am not against borrowing per se, but we need to be transparent in our budgeting. We are always talking about forthcoming budgets, but we don't make a review of the previous one. For example, I expected to hear what was the performance level of 2022 budget. Every year, we keep discussing how many trillions we are budgeting for the next year. But what about the past one? How much of it was executed and what was the performance level? We need to know all these things. This is a challenge for you journalists. Borrowing, Uncle Yori, the truth of the matter is this: even America as a government, they are owing trillions of dollars, and the economy is vibrant at the same time. What we need to concentrate on is when you borrow, what do you use the money for? Is it for income-generating projects where you can generate money to repay or at least sustain the interest level? Or is it for paying salaries and just something that does not bring any return? If it is for income-generating projects, then there is hope because the country needs to develop infrastructurally. But when there is no accountability, that's where the issue lies. I'm very surprised if you Uncle Yori, to get to know some of the true situation of things in this government, you will be surprised to know that we are getting nearly opposite the direction of situations on ground. They don't say what they do. It is what they have failed to do that most people publicize, and that is what people use to form opinions.
Okay.
I am saying that there should be transparency, there should be acknowledgement, we should know what the budget is, is giving us or is about to give us, and the level the previous one performed. Let's discuss that one too.
Okay, indeed. Thank you very much for calling in, Mr. George. And Professor Ife, to that question of here we are discussing a projection, the one we projected before that is going to come to an end, how efficient were we? How well did it go? And how transparent is it, are the dealings with it, concerning it?
One of the most transparent arm of the government is actually the budget office, led by the DG. If you go to their website, they publish quarterly. The performance levels are published quarterly. And it's not even the budget consultation process very, very rigorous. And I usually speak on the national presentation of the budgets and consultations. So they're very, very thorough. But that still tells one part of the story, because the bigger part of that story is how do you get all the MDAs, the agencies that are supposed to be returning handsome money to the coffers, how do you get them to do so? I have seen optimistic forecasts, and in fact, why the Fiscal Responsibility Commission Act, Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007, requires these agencies, 122 of them, to actually return 80% of their operating surplus to the Treasury. Difficulty in implementing that has also forced government to implement cost to revenue, to say, look, my friend, I want 50% of your revenue. You can spend anything you like, but 60%, 50% must come to the coffers. Now, that is a crude way of doing it, because it doesn't take into account a lot of other things. And Dr. Gomez has pointed out some of those. They are also exposed to rising costs, and some of them have issues. And but it is one of the. Then the second part of the third part of the FRA 2007 is, if you don't return 70-80% of your this operating surplus as a when due, then they can actually clamp down on 25% of your revenue and take it from source. And then that also bites. But you can see three different regimes operating in the area of trying to get money out of these MDAs. But in terms of the budget performance, it is published all the time.
Okay.
What I would say is that towards the December, our budget performance is always 100% at all times on recurrent expenditure. Okay. 100%
okay.
at all times.
Okay.
Where the problem is on the capital component. Because if you look at this priority, the president will say to the finance minister, make sure you pay salaries, make sure you pay a pension, make sure we provide money for the security. Remember, last year, the security was consuming 22% of the budget. Now, are you going to not pay them? Then pay salaries, you have to pay them. So by the time you finish paying the mandatory things, then it comes to capital. Capital is always left behind. So what happens is that towards December, the capital spend, why is the recurrent is 100%? The capital spend tends to be low, maybe 20, 30, 40%.
Okay.
So what then happens is that they are forced to push that fiscal year to 20, the following year, to March of the following year, so that the more of the capital will be spent. And then you now have, in the first quarter, you have capital of the previous year running, and then at the same time, the budget of that year running. So they tend to run together. And
okay.
Even this year, it was still extended to June, just to try and beef up the capital component, and then make sure we finish at a higher overall performance than 70% or something.
All right then. So Dr. Gomez, before I come to you, Fidel in Owerri has called in, and thank you very much, Fidel, for holding on. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Like I said, my name is Chief Fidel Onyeneke, and I keep wondering why we have all these deficits and economic problems when we have economic advisors of both the president and the nation, and we have other agencies that handle economic affairs. Does it mean that they don't give appropriate advice to the president? Does it mean that they don't do what they're supposed to do by telling the National Assembly what to do, our budget and so on? Why do we still have all this deficit in our planning and things like that? I went to a situation where we have to engage our experts, find a way out, because it's unfortunate that we have Nigerians who are helping other countries of the world, working in various economic departments and so on, and giving special advice. While here, we are battling with poor economic situation and so on. Let our agencies, Fiscal Responsibility Commission, whatever, and so on, all of them, let them do the needful and save this country so that we will have a better economic situation in Nigeria. Thank you and God bless you. I'm Fidel Onyeneke.
Thank you very much, Fidel, for calling in with that question. Now, Dr. Gomez, I want to come to you with a simplistic question. This is not exactly a business program, but we're delighted to have you experts in business and the economy. So the simplistic aspect to the question is, so what is wrong with cutting our coat according to our cloth? As a person might logically say it. The previous caller just came in and said, what's all this deficit? The deficit is even more than we're able to generate. So, as I said, it's a simplistic question. Explain, please, for non-economic minds why, sorry, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, can I go on?
Yes, please, Dr. Gomez.
Yeah, I think, yeah, okay. Yeah, I think the simple explanation is that the size of the appetite is huge as compared to the available food. So, I mean, the appetite is huge in the sense that the Nigerian state has created an image of a do-all, solve-all ability. So the government is so massive in terms of reach, in terms of responsibilities. We have huge security issues. And remember, we're a massive consumpting economy. We don't produce. We don't produce much of our goods. Somebody alluded to it earlier, that we don't produce much. We import more. Not only import, but we import inflation along with everything we're importing. So when you have all these needs, and of course, add to the fact that there's a lot of leakages in the system. We mentioned, we're talking about revenues coming in from MDAs, which are supposed to boost up the revenue of government. But as at February this year, 70 MDAs had not remitted anything to the Treasury in terms of what they're supposed to do. So government has to come up with several ways of making, and they're supposed to remit. Like Ken said, 80% of their revenue is supposed to be remitted to government, but up to 70 out of 155 are remitted zero. So when you have all those things happening, leakages are there, then the appetite is huge. Then obviously you have to go a borrowing. Then you have to live a life of deficit. And the deficit, some of the deficit funds critical, or some of the borrowings for critical activities like security, like salaries, like pensions. So this year, according to what the minister said, next year is going to be more difficult in the sense that almost all the money is going to two areas. One, subsidy payment, 7.3 up to 7.3 trillion naira, and debt payment. So when you have two non-producing aspects of your budget consuming 80% of your budget, then there's a problem.
Indeed.
I mean, what's left? Virtually nothing is left for capital expenditure.
Yeah.
She said that there will be nothing left for capital expenditure. So next year, we're going to have a tough year in the sense that no single capital project is going to be undertaken, but all the money is going to be used to either pay debt or pay subsidy. Subsidy will kill us all if we don't take time.
If we're not careful.
It's consuming more than the actual revenue.
3.36 trillion naira is being reserved for that for next year.
I take the worst case scenario,
You said so because you said you wouldn't be
Yes.
surprised if it extended beyond June to December.
Exactly.
Mr. Mohammed in Abuja, thank you for holding on. Please go ahead now.
Good morning, Uncle Yori. How are you?
Good morning, sir. Very well, thank you.
Good morning, Uncle Yori. How are you?
Very well, thank you. You got a question?
Yeah, thank you. My own is a question and then an appeal.
Okay.
Yes, number one, the appeal I want to make was the program of yesterday. Please, Uncle Yori, if you can run such kind of program next time, you run it the way you are running this one now. You stop it, answer people, let people ask those guys that are come to defend their parties or whatever, and then let them contribute the way we are contributing now with this. I can say this one is a national program. The party issue too is a national program. But please give us a chance to ask those people that are coming to talk on behalf of their candidate or whatever. Because the case of yesterday, I tried yesterday to call. I even called after the program several times. Nobody picking my call. I was so disturbed.
So sorry about that. So sorry about that, Mr. Mohammed. That was yesterday. But into today, Mr. Mohammed, sorry, sir. Into today, the budget. What are your thoughts on that? Did you have any questions for our experts?
I'm not going on that budget issue now.
Yes.
Can Nigeria do without subsidy? That's my question, number one.
Okay. Okay. I hear you.
Hello, sir.
Yes. You're looking for areas of savings, right? Yeah. I got you.
Ask those experts.
Yeah.
Ask those our experts, we invited them. Can Nigeria do without subsidy, considering the level of poverty we are in Nigeria today? Can we survive without subsidy? That's my question.
I hear you, but neither of the experts has advocated the removal of subsidy. Neither of them this morning has said.
So if that's the case, Conciliary, what are the solutions? Can they provide solutions for us?
Oh, okay. Okay. Let's try that one instead. Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed, for calling in. Minister projected 3.36 trillion for 2023 subsidy. That is pegging it at around June, but our experts have said that they'll be very, very surprised if indeed it is just limited to June. It could easily go to December. Now, Mr. Mohammed in Abuja is asking, Prof, let me bring this to you, Professor Ife. He's bringing it to you. It's along the line of the question I asked Dr. Gomez about, so what's wrong with cutting our coat according to our size? He explained our huge appetite. Now, Mr. Mohammed is asking, is it conceivable that we could do without a subsidy? Professor Ife, you already said that you wouldn't be surprised to see petrol PMS at 200 naira to the liter next year. Can we do without subsidy?
Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Let me tell you 4 things that are the heart of our challenge, our problem in the country.
Okay.
One is that we are a net importer. That means that we are importing anything and everything. And when you are a net importer and you are an import-dependent economy, then your economy will be on the transmission belt of global supply chains. Anything that happens anywhere around the world must affect you.
Mm-hmm.
Even if anybody that coughs, you will catch cold. And that is why health challenge affected us with COVID. Although part of the COVID thing was also disruption of the supply chain, we got affected. The America oil prime mortgage prime crisis in 2008 affected us. But then Sanusi was governor then of Central Bank, and he had to bring out AMCON, and they gave them 6 trillion to buy up, and they will survive that. In 2017, we had cut in our production commodity because we are a commodity exporting country. Well, that's the next one I'm going to come to. It affected us. And then today, Ukraine, Russian crisis is affecting us. Why should it really affect us that much? Mm-hmm. After all, we have oil and gas as Russia. But the fact is that because we are an import-dependent country, all those countries that we're importing things from, example, Europe, 40% of their gas is coming from Russia. All their prices have gone through the roof. Energy price, 300%. So anything we're importing from them will carry imported inflation into the country. So that's why we are being affected. The second point is our economy is monocultural. We have a single commodity, so we have one diversification index is 1. Because in all whatever it accounts for 70% of your revenue is your diversification index. So, but the crude oil is accounting for 89% of our revenue, export revenue. So that means 79% is crude, 10% is gas, both of them 89%. So we are essentially a monocultural economy. Now, because we have no control over that economy, we are exposed to exogenic forces. So whenever there is a shortfall in production, either it's caused by bandits or it's caused by deliberate or anything, we're going to be affected. If the price of the crude falls, we don't fix the price, are going to be affected. Now that leads us to 2 things. One, our government depends on 50% of their revenue from what comes from NNPC, that monocultural dependence. So when it hits, then the government takes a hit. Government budget will be in disarray. The fourth one, which is very critical, is that our forex is dependent on that.
Yeah. About
90% or 89% of the forex is coming from there. Now, normally on a good day, NNPC remits $3 billion to the central bank every month from 2014. But now it's only doing 300 million. Now, 300 is only 10% of what you should be sending. And now, where is central bank going to get the balance? So central bank is running on 10 to 12 to about 20, 30% of what it should get. So it's looking at diaspora remittance to get some money that has collapsed from 26 billion to only about $5 billion. It looks at foreign direct investment that has collapsed. We can't even remember where it is now. It's not even there. Foreign portfolio investment is running away. All of them are heading back to America because of the increase in the
okay,
price.
Prof.
So all of these things means that our economy is vulnerable. Any little thing affects us. Inflation is part of it. Part of it is imported inflation. The rest of it are structural factors I have mentioned before, which is high prices of commodity and all that stuff of power. So all of those are affecting the economy.
Yeah.
What
Prof,
can you
one
do?
second, please.
Now, what can you do?
I beg your pardon, Prof. 1 second, please. Devils in Ikoyi, I beg your pardon, Devil in Ikoyi has been waiting. Thank you very much for waiting. Go right ahead now, Devils. Devil, I beg your pardon.
Thank you, Yori.
I don't know why I
Thank you.
keep on
Can
putting
you
an
hear me?
S behind it. Sorry.
Can you hear me, Yori?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. It's great to see that we have two great economists on hand as you are having this conversation. But the question that really bothers me is because we've become an ostrich nation. We put our heads inside the ground and act as if our problems will go away, and we continue doing the same thing. What is the point of having economics or these economists give us advice and we don't listen to it? There's a National Economic Planning Committee that, for the last time I remember, all the recommendations from Dr. Doyin Salami were pushed under the table. What is the wisdom in planning budgets? We're talking about the national budget here. Budget deficits for largely items that we don't even benefit from. So already the quality of the budget is very weak in the sense that literally the bulk of it is recurrent expenditure. And then a small portion of it is capital cost, which is where the growth actually comes in. So we've gotten to a point that we are literally borrowing to fund our salaries, fund our daily living, meaning we're spending more than what we have. There's no attempt in any form to cut our coats according to our size, all in the name of politics. And then when you add, I would like to refer to it as corrupt fiscal behavior, you start to blow up ways and means way beyond what is allowed legally. You are subsidizing a sector that you can't even put an account of how much is being spent, not being spent, of how much is being consumed. So at the end of the day, we're not talking about how much Nigeria is losing. We're talking about crude oil theft, and once again, we're fighting ghosts. Huge oil tankers are being diverted, and we look at ourselves and tell each other that we don't know who is doing it. I mean, come on, are we going to wait until the economy collapses completely? And then what we couldn't do for ourselves, IMF will now come and tell you that your money is worth nothing. It's now $1 to 2,000 naira, and that you will have to cut X, Y, and Z. Why do we do this to ourselves in Nigeria? I don't want to wait for a time, Yori, that we will not be able to discuss, because hardship will have gone to an extent that it will raise up the level of social resistance in this country. Why do we keep doing this?
Well, I want to thank you very much, Devo. I beg your pardon. Thank you very much for calling in, Devo. That was a sort of a commentary. I understand that Dr. Gomez, has left us. That hurts a bit because we were really enjoying this. But thank God we still have Professor Ken Ife with us. And you just heard Devo and his commentary there. At the end of the day, why does this keep on happening year after year? But let me ask you, in addition, because I have very little time left now, the other thing that we could do, governments don't like doing. We could raise taxes, couldn't we? Because this is about receivables. Now, I just saw that Dr. Gomez came back on there. But we could raise taxes, Prof, perhaps. I mean, it's an outlet. Governments don't like taking it, but it's an outlet.
Well, see, the issue about raising tax is very problematic because you know what? On paper, our tax to revenue, government revenue, is only 7%, and that's the lowest in Africa. The average is 18%. In West Africa, our macroeconomic convergence criteria for West Africa, it says 20% minimum. So we have a strategy. The Ministry of Finance has an aggressive strategic revenue distance that it looks to raise it from 7% to 15% over the next 3 years. That is to 2025. So that is taking its time. But the answer is not in raising the tax of the current people in the tax net. The answer lies in widening the tax base and then also in plugging the holes. If you look at the Finance Act 2021, they have tackled that on the area of services by increasing from mode 1 to mode 2 and mode 3. Mode 1 is when you can stay abroad and provide services in Nigeria, but you're not getting revenue. Example, satellite services, DST kind type of services. Okay. Mode 2 is when you are in the country, come in, do service and bugger off.
Okay,
and then don't pay tax.
I beg your pardon, Professor.
We plug in that. And then the last
so
one
sorry
is
to jump in, Professor,
physically.
because this is really valuable information we're getting, but we've almost run out of time. And Dr. Gomos, well, we thought you had gone, but really there's no more time. But you have said that, along with your brother there, you've said that we need to be buckling up for next year. It's not likely to be a very comfortable ride, right, Dr. Gomos? Does that summarize it well?
Yeah. Yes, you summarize it very well. It's going to be tough next year. We must buckle up properly, and we must make hard choices. Mohammed asked the question, must we subsidize
fuel? Oh, it has frozen again. Well, we don't even have the time to, it's a rhetorical question from what we've heard. But I want to thank you both, gentlemen, Professor Kenife, development economist and lead consultant, ECOWAS Commission, and Dr. Ezekiel Gomos of the Jos Business School, Executive Director, Jos Business School. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been invaluable, your perspectives on this matter. Thank you very much. So that's our program.
Thank you, Yori.
Yeah, our pleasure. Thanks our program today. Please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I'm Yori Folari. Bye-bye for now.